We're going to start with how do AI models search? There's 5 key steps here. User queries. This is the question you ask in LLM. The search that the model does when it goes to find more information. Often this is via Google, where it will pull information from the internet that it's going to then process and consume. It does that in its reference extraction and reference citation steps, in which it comes up with a final answer. I'm going to walk through each of these in detail here. Let's say we have a prompt, for example, the best minivans for city driving. This is the question we are asking AI. The first step is the LLM is going to have to decide whether it has enough data to answer that question. For historical questions like, I don't know, what did peasants eat in the Middle Ages? The answer is something the model was already trained on, right? This happened a long time ago. It's something in the factual corpus of the model's data, and it doesn't need to go research to find this information. But for something that requires new data, like what was the score of the Champions League games or this weekend or this week, the model doesn't know that when it's trained. It has to search the internet and find novel information to answer your question. This is the same for some topical searches like the best minivan. New car brands are releasing new minivans every year, and LLM isn't guaranteed to know the answer to that question. It might have to search the internet to answer it. So the first step is deciding whether or not the LLM needs to search and find more info. When the LLM searches the internet, it goes and writes its own web searches. These are examples of web searches that we found ChatGPT asking for that last question on best minivans for city driving. Best minivans for city driving review minivans good for urban driving 2026. Does this look like the Google searches that you write? Is this like how you would look for a minivan? Not really. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty weird. We also see ChatGPT will write multiple search queries. On average, it's around 3 search queries, 2.7 are data, where it'll run them in parallel or sequentially and dive deeper into data. These model queries are really, really weird. We were going to that a little bit earlier. They are very different than human queries. We see the average search query that a model writes is around 11 words, 11.1 words. And this is proprietary data from our software, so kind of fun data here. This is the distribution of how long these queries are that the models are writing and searching the internet with. We see the very low end is like 3 words, and the very high end is up to like almost 30 words for a query it's sending to Google to answer questions with. And this is in contrast to how people search Google, where they'll write 2 to 3 word queries. Big similarity of the query that you ask ChatGPT and what it searches Google with is somewhat similar on average. This is a model I trained to see how similar those 2 queries are. 100% here says that the query ChatGPT asked Google is exactly the same as the query you asked Google or ChatGPT, and 0% means none of the words match. And so we can see that most queries that ChatGPT is asking Google are somewhat similar, but not exactly the same. It's rewriting the queries. And we can also see that ChatGPT is inserting a bunch of words into prompts that it gives Google. These are the most common words that are inserted into prompts when ChatGPT processes a prompt that you give it and runs it through Google. We see the words tools, 2026, list, comparison, software, best, platforms, a lot of things asking for roundups, lists, and recent time sensitivity. Now, the next question is, when it's running these search queries, these weird search queries that are totally different than what humans run, where is it running it? ChatGPT is using ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, all of Google's products are actually using Google. So under the hood, you're basically asking ChatGPT a question, and then ChatGPT is writing these really weird Google searches that it goes and searches Google for and pulls back the relevant context for it. Claude is using Brave, and Microsoft Copilot is using Bing. The screen went out.
Yeah. My computer rejected Bing.
Me too.
Hey, Ethan.
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer shut down there for a sec. So, you want to just repeat the last 2 minutes? 1 minute, actually.
Yeah. Sweet. So, basically saying that ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, they use Google and are searching Google with those really weird queries we were just looking at. Claude is using Brave under the hood, one of the other browsers, and Microsoft Copilot is using Bing as its search browser. The next step is looking at the references that are pulled by the Google search. So I put in best minivans for city driving reviews, minivans good for urban driving 2026. This is the really weird query that ChatGPT wrote. And we can see the actual results page from Google. This is exactly what the model sees. There's results from Car and Driver, Edmunds, Reddit, quite a lot of Reddit, Car Confections, and US News and Reports. This is what the model sees when it makes that query and then processes for analysis. It'll select individual articles it wants to read and then individual passages from those articles too. After it chooses what articles it wants, it says, hey, I read these were the citations I used, and uses that to create its final response. We call these model citations, and they're basically like the source that the model used in its answer. Lastly, this is what a final answer looks like from our platform. A bunch of different parts that we already went over. The prompt that I asked ChatGPT, the weird web searches that it ran on Google, all of the results that it found when it was doing its web search, and then finally the answer it actually gave me. This is what ChatGPT said to the prompt I gave it on best minivans for city driving. It said the Toyota Sienna, the Kia Carnival, the Honda Odyssey, and the Volkswagen ID Buzz. All of this was heavily influenced by its citations it pulled. And these are very relevant for influencing the behavior of models. When we think about AEO optimizing for how buyers find or perceive our brand, what we're really optimizing for is this search stack in how a buyer question like this ends up with the results that we want it to end up with to influence the answer ChatGPT gives.